Let me say, I am really pleased to introduce you to Dr. Brian Pierce. He's a distinguished visiting scholar with mediaX and a master innovator and a strategist for cutting edge technologies. He's going to talk today about cognitive security. So, Brian, if you would.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Martha. So, wicked problems can't be solved, but they can be tamed or managed. And cognitive security is such a problem. Cognitive security is old and new. It is old in terms of Sun Tzu's famous dictum, all warfare is based on deception. With cognitive security essential to not being deceived. It is new through the exponential expansion of the internet, which has boosted our productivity to incredible heights, but has also opened new avenues for bad actors to try to influence us and threaten our cognitive security at unprecedented scale and speed. Thus, cognitive security is concerned with protection against malicious influence, both online and offline, at scales ranging from individuals to nation states. So here I show the 2018 indictment of the Russian Internet Research Agency, or IRA, for using fraud and deceit to interfere with US political and electoral processes. Now, this indictment provides one example of a malicious online influence campaign conducted actually by a nation state. The indictment describes how the defendants and co-conspirators created hundreds of social media accounts and then used these accounts to develop fictitious personas into potential public opinion leaders in the United States. The indictment reflects one of many efforts using disinformation to influence. And we see today a very current example would be the disinformation and misinformation associated with the COVID-19 pandemic that feeds conspiracy theories, as wild as you can imagine, and of course, misleading medical advice. So cognitive security is a private sector concern as well as public. And as shown here, online disinformation threatens the cognitive security of individuals, such as Bill Gates on the left. I don't know if you've heard, there's a whole conspiracy theory about him actually starting the COVID-19 pandemic to give him the motivation to then come back with a vaccine. It's totally ludicrous, but it's an impact on him, certainly, to let alone others. And on the right, you see an impact on an institution like the stock market and listed companies, where again, this aspect of fake news, disinformation can have truly disruptive effects. So I see cognitive security as foundational to national security, inclusive of the public and private sectors. In this chart, the black symbology represents a malicious influencer, with the blue symbology representing a susceptible population, which could be employees in a company or even citizens, of course, in a country. From the lower left to the upper right, I really show how the advance of technology has evolved the roles of humans and machines in influence. From, at the lower left, direct interactions between humans, to engagements mediated by machines, with machines starting as tools, then as partners and teammates. In the beginning, it was human-to-human forms of influence, such as word of mouth. But with the advent of the industrial era, humans recognized how machines, such as broadcasting tools, could enhance influence capabilities. The next stage is humans partnering and then teaming with autonomous machines or bots that enable a more extensive influence at the scale and speed of today's highly connected world. So cognitive security, shown here, addresses three key concerns. The first concern is the susceptibility of people to malicious influence. And we might be curious at just influence in general, but we'll focus here on malicious influence. A second concern is that malicious influence is often conducted with a high degree of anonymity, which makes a focused response difficult. And the third concern is being able to actively counter malicious influence. So in response to these concerns, I organized the techniques and technologies of cognitive security into three core elements, really shown here with the following objectives. One, strengthen cognitive resilience against malicious influence in general and disinformation in particular. Two, achieve broad cognitive situational awareness, which includes attribution of the sources of disinformation and malinfluence. And three, create accurate and robust cognitive engagement capabilities to actively counter malicious influence and disinformation. So I will go into detail on each of these three concerns, or these core elements, starting with cognitive resilience. So shown here is a person in blue surrounded by a filter that is rejecting disinformation and accepting information. That's a simplistic view, but certainly gets to the point. And so I see cognitive resilience as coming close to sort of building this type of filter. And for this, I think one needs to start by cultivating an attitude of critical thinking. And fundamental to critical thinking is not accepting things at face value. So in the painting here, it appears what is depicted as a forest of individual trees. But if we literally dig deeper, we see that it is actually a single organism with clones of a single tree. And this is the famous Pando aspen forest in Utah. So here in this case, we need to see the tree for the forest rather than the forest for the trees. Now, there are many ongoing efforts to improve the individual and societal cognitive resilience through education that involves critical thinking. And three such efforts are shown here, and I alluded to one of them earlier. So on the left is Finland, and they've established a national education program that actually has placed the country first in media literacy in Europe, where media literacy I take here as representative of cognitive security. In the middle part of the chart, we see the online game called Bad News, which was developed by two Cambridge University researchers, John Rosenbeck and Sander van der Linden. Now in the game, players take on the role of a fake news producer and thereby learn about strategies used in the production of fake news. Then on the right is the civic and online reasoning curriculum that was developed by Professor Sam Weinberg and colleagues at Stanford. Now, this curriculum was developed to help students improve their online media literacy. For example, through development of strategies that answer three key questions that always should be asked when encountering unfamiliar web content. Like, who's behind the information? What's the evidence? What do other sources say? So cognitive resilience is clearly improved by strengthening critical thinking and media literacy through education. At the same time, a growing proportion of this media has been manipulated. And that's really what's presented here in this chart, where on the left is a manipulated image frame from a video. On the right are heat maps that are looking at inconsistencies in the noise fingerprint of the image, where red is high inconsistency and blue low. So based on that, you could say that the man's face is likely manipulated, the woman's is not. Now, this is detected using a neural network trained on noise fingerprints. Now, most manipulations are benign. They're done for fun or for artistic value, but some are for adversarial purposes, such as disinformation and propaganda campaigns. As indicated here, we leave data footprints in today's digital world. And although the ground here is sand, it is actually more like concrete when it comes to the lasting nature of these footprints. Well, here in this chart, you see our friend trying to improve cognitive situational awareness by trying to understand the source or sources of disinformation. So there is a new program that DARPA has started. It's called Semantic Forensics, and it builds on an earlier program called Media Forensics. And the objectives for that program are shown here because it's just getting started, with the attribution objectives emphasized in bold. Now, the Semantic Forensics program is seeking to develop a suite of algorithms that encompass the detection, attribution, and characterization of manipulated multimedia, where detection determines if multimedia has been manipulated, attribution infers the origin of the manipulation, and characterization reasons about the malicious intent of the manipulation. So here we see our friend actually doing, looks like a great job in actively countering disinformation. Now, Technology, such as in software-based bots or agents, can help our friend at the scale and speed that we need in today's networked world. So cyber systems today, their fundamental weakness is the human user, with over 80% of cyber penetrations that are starting with a social engineering attack like spear phishing. This chart compares how social engineering defense is done today on the left and how it could be done in the future, at least through the objectives of the Active Social Engineering Defense or ACID program, where they're looking at how bots could actually support humans in terms of this defense. Malicious actors, shown here in red, are currently able to compromise and use with impunity large numbers of third-party computers and other devices, indicated here in gray. And as blue, we would like to counter red's actions in gray because that can threaten ours as well. These collections of compromised devices are commonly referred to as botnets and are used for criminal, espionage, computer network attack, and often a combination of all three. The potential effects of these botnets are certainly extensive and constitute a threat to national security. But really improving the security posture of blue alone is not sufficient to counter these threats, as the majority of the botnet nodes reside in neutral networks or so-called gray space, as shown here. And gray space would be the internet, it could even be a corporate VPN. So current approaches to addressing and dealing with these threats are very limited. So what is needed is the ability to identify and neutralize botnets and other large-scale malware in compromised devices and systems in a manner that is scalable, timely, safe, and reliable, and in accordance with privacy and other legal guidelines. Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you and, of course, hear your questions. Thanks again. So let me hand it over to Martha.
Brian, thank you so much for spending time with us today and helping us to think about this new concept of cognitive security. It's sensing and sense-making across many different domains, and it has so many different alternatives. And I have to say that today's session leaves me with a great sense of hope. Hope that we can enhance cognitive resilience through education, that technology can help, that trust in data is critical and preserving privacy is very important. All of us here today have a responsibility, we have an opportunity, and that is to leverage technology to enhance the human experience.